Standing Order 230.
Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the motion that this House considers and adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs on petitions by the Republican Liberty Party, Reverend Dennis Ndwega-Mthumbe, Mr. Geoffrey Lagat, and Mr. Owo Steve Jerry, seeking the removal of 4 specified commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, December 1st, 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 251(3) of the Constitution. Number 1, finds that the petition by the Republican Liberty Party discloses serious violations of the Constitution or other laws as a ground for removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Mathenge Wanderi, and Mr. Justus Abonyo Nyangaya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. B, that the petition by Reverend Dennis Ndwega-Mthumbe discloses serious violations of the Constitution or other laws, gross misconduct and incompetence as grounds of removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Mathenge Wanderi, and Mr. Justus Abonyo Nyangaya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. C, the petition by Geoffrey Lagat discloses serious violations of the Constitution or other laws, gross misconduct and incompetence as grounds for the removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Mathenge Wanderi, and Mr. Justus Abonyo Nyangaya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Number D, that the petition by Owo Steve Jerry discloses a serious violation of the Constitution or other laws, gross misconduct and incompetence as grounds for removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Mathenge Wanderi, and Mr. Justus Abonyo Nyangaya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Number 2, resolves that 1, that the petitions herein, together with the material in support thereof, be sent to His Excellency the President pursuant to Article 251(3) of the Constitution. 2, that His Excellency the President appoints a tribunal to deal with the matters in accordance with the Article 251(5) of the Constitution, and that 3, His Excellency the President suspends the commissioners herein pending the determination by the tribunal. Honorable Speaker, the House will recall that 4 petitioners came to the National Assembly with the petitions that these 4 commissioners be removed from the Iebc. Honorable Speaker, you referred the petitions to the Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, and in spite of the fact that we had 14 days, we did the best we could, and thank you very much for granting us an extension of 3 days. May I start by thanking those members of the committee who sat throughout the period we assigned for hearings. May I thank the Secretariat for the good work done, and may I report to this House this afternoon that we have 2 volumes of the report which we have tendered to the House and which is being considered. Every member can obtain those volumes, and you can read for yourself, because in my own estimation, the committee, in spite of all the hurdles that were thrown on its way, actually did a fantastic job. We were able to sit, we were able to hear, and we were able to make recommendations. There were many issues that were raised, and all of them are addressed in this report, including our jurisdiction, what role we had to play, and whether there was anyone else mandated to do this work. Eventually, we found that we were the right committee to deal with it, and this is why we listened to everyone and came up with a report. All the petitioners appeared before us. They were actually heard, and everything they said is in this report. We also afforded adequate opportunity to the respondents, the 4 commissioners. I'm pleased to report to the House that actually they were represented by Council. Council made representations, which representations we took into consideration while drawing the report we have brought to the House. What we have is a true record of what took place. Honorable House of Parliament, please do read it for yourselves. You will see exactly what was said and what we did. Eventually, having listened to the petitioners, we actually came up with a decision as to whether any of the petitions made disclosures. And I'm happy to report to the House that after agonizing for a couple of days away from Parliament, we were able to establish that each of those petitions disclosed a ground upon which each of the 4 commissioners can be removed from office. Therefore, we came to a conclusion and a recommendation that the entire report in the 82 volumes, including all the material, the petitions, the responses, the letters that were written, be forwarded to His Excellency the President, so that he can appoint a tribunal to deal with these 4 commissioners, who actually deserve to be removed from office on the grounds of gross misconduct, violation of the law, everything else which they did, which was untoward. I do not wish to go into evidence that was adduced before the tribunal, because this will take time. It is on record. I adopt it as it is. Let everybody read this. Let everybody acquaint himself or herself with the report, so that we are able to debate soberly. Because this is a report of the committee which this House can either adopt or reject. But I do urge you to adopt it, because the issues raised by these petitioners were not frivolous. These are issues which, on the face of it, established a prima facie case. It is on that ground that we have made this recommendation, with the last recommendation being, while the investigation is going on, these 4 commissioners should actually not remain in office, but should be suspended, so that they are investigated and everything else is done in accordance with our constitution, in accordance with the law. And I confirm, we also actually followed the standing orders. With those few remarks, I beg to move that we actually consider and adopt this report, and I request my able Vice Chairman, Mr. Ekomas Bwengi Mutuse, to second the adoption. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chairman, for your able presentation. I confirm that the report tabled before the House and as presented by the Chair is a true reflection of the deliberations of the committee, and therefore I second.
Honorable members, I now propose the question, which is that this House considers and adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs on petitions by the Republican Party, Liberty Party, Reverend Dennis Ndwiga Ndumbi, Mr. Geoffrey Langat, and Mr. Owor Steve Jerry, seeking the removal of 4 specified commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, December 1, 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 2513 of the Constitution, finds A, that the petition by Republican Liberty Party discloses serious violations of the Constitution or other laws as a ground for removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Madenge Wanderi, and Mr. Justus Abonyo Nyang'aya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. B, that the petition by Reverend Dennis Ndwiga Ndumbi discloses serious violations of the Constitution or other laws, gross misconduct, and incompetence as grounds for removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Madenge Wanderi, and Mr. Julius Abonyo Nyang'aya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. C, that the petition by Geoffrey Langat discloses serious violations of the Constitution and or other laws, gross misconduct, and incompetence as grounds for removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Madenge Wanderi, and Mr. Justus Abonyo Nyang'aya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. D, that the petition by Owor Steve Jerry discloses serious violations of the Constitution or other laws, gross misconduct, and incompetence as grounds for removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Madenge Wanderi, and Mr. Justus Abonyo Nyang'aya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. 2, resolves 1, that the petitions herein together with the materials in support thereof be sent to His Excellency the President pursuant to Article 251(3) of the Constitution. 2, that His Excellency the President appoints a tribunal to deal with the matter in accordance with Article 251(5) of the Constitution. And 3, that His Excellency the President suspends the commissioners herein pending the determination by the tribunal. Yes. Majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes. Okay.
And I beg members' indulgence on this one. And it's advisable that because it is following a petition by members of the public, Honorable Speaker, allow me, even as I rise to support, to, in a very special manner, thank the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee for the good work that they put in. And Honorable Speaker, also thank you, because as Speaker, when you conveyed on the 15th of November 2022, conveyed the petitions, the 4 petitions by the Republican Liberty Party, Reverend Dennis Ndwiga Thubi, Geoffrey Langat, and Owor Steve Jerry, the petitions for the removal from office of the 4 Iebc commissioners. Honorable Speaker, I was thanking you because you did give guidelines to the committee on how they would conduct their hearings. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, because we have all followed the proceedings of the JAILA committee, they did adhere to your guidelines, and following those guidelines, Honorable Speaker, the hearings were quite orderly. I know many Kenyans have asked why is it that these hearings were even being televised on TV, and some have argued, Honorable Speaker, that all that needed to do was for the committee to look at the petitions quietly. But with your guidelines, Honorable Speaker, you did give guidelines that required that the commissioners who were being petitioned against be afforded the right to appear in person or even through legal representation, and the right even to cross-examine the petitioners under oath over all the matters that they had raised in their petitions. Honorable Speaker, and indeed, I am privy to proceedings of the committee through the chair of the committee that indeed all the 4 commissioners were afforded that opportunity to appear either in person or through counsel. But they chose not to appear, Honorable Speaker, but they did send, a number of them sent their counsel to represent them. And Honorable Speaker, members will remember the contention on the jurisdiction of the committee of JLAC on this matter, and the ruling by the Honorable Chair, the Honorable Murugara, that indeed the committee had jurisdiction to hear the petitions. And I wish to confirm to the House and to the nation that this committee has a mandate to hear and determine though the 4 petitions pursuant to Article 251, Sub-Article 3 of the Constitution, and our own Standing Order 230, Sub-Article 4, as the chair of the committee directed. However, Honorable Speaker, members will remember that Commissioner Irene Masit did not make any appearance as advised by her legal counsel, who wrote to the committee through the clerk of the National Assembly via the letter dated 28 November 2022, informing the committee of her withdrawal from the proceedings. But the other commissioners did, besides fighting on the question of jurisdiction, when they appeared before the committee, because it was in full view of cameras, their counsel withdrew from the proceedings of the committee. But subsequently, they also submitted to the jurisdiction of the same committee when they sought again to appear to cross-examine the petitioners, but of course with a lot of delaying tactics, Honorable Speaker, and I must commend all the members of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee who conducted themselves with a lot of decorum and even afforded, there's one sitting, Honorable Speaker, that looked like it was a law school class. I think the legal counsel had anticipated to find accountants like me before JLAC, but were rather surprised to find seasoned lawyers and senior lawyers like Wakili Mureu, Wakili Osoro, Wakili Njeri, the member for Kirinyaga, and others, including the Honorable Mutuse, and the chair, Sir George himself, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, the members of this committee burnt the midnight oil to even have this report ready, and we must commend them. Honorable Speaker, the other thing worth noting is that in the history of this country, we have had IEBC commissions that have been fought left, right, and center. In fact, there are people who say the most dangerous job to take up in this country is one of being a commissioner of IEBC. And indeed, it's because of what the political class in this country has subjected commissioners of IEBC to. Honorable Speaker, I'm saying this because it is worth noting that this is the first time in the history of all independent electoral and boundaries commissions that we have set up in this country that we are seeing due process being followed in the removal or otherwise of a commission or commissioners, Honorable Speaker. Members will recall from the times of Chesoni, the times of Kivuitu, the times of Isaac Hassan, commissioners in IBC were removed through street demonstrations and riots around town to force commissioners out of office. Therefore, we must commend this committee and the country that our democracy now has become of age, that we remove people from offices in line with our statutes and our constitution. And I must commend this House, Honorable Speaker, and we must be proud that as the 13th Assembly, we are presiding over a process that follows due process. We have not had to get anybody to the streets, despite the gross violation of our constitution, Honorable Speaker, and our statutes that this commission has engaged in during the electioneering process. And Honorable Speaker, the fateful day in Bomas, Honorable Speaker, is equivalent to January 6 in the US, Honorable Speaker, and the attempted takeover of the Capitol in the US. And because we model our democracy along the operations of other well-grown democracies like that of the US. We must not, as a country, ever allow something like what happened in Bomas of Kenya on that day to ever happen again. These commissioners were going to ban this country. And it is sad, and it's rather poetic justice or ironical, Mr. Speaker, that the people who have agitated for the removal of commissioners in the past through riots and street demonstrations today are speaking about street demonstrations to protect commissioners who have violated our constitution, abused the people of Kenya, and attempted to stage a coup against the sovereign will of the people of Kenya that they exercised in a democratic, free and fair election on the 9th of August. I have no fear of contradiction, Honorable Speaker, to state that these commissioners are indeed people who should be in the category of criminals. People who wanted to ban our country, prodded by people who made them believe that they had power over the people of Kenya, whose sovereign authority is given to them by the Constitution and Article 1 of our Constitution, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I said it is poetic justice that the same people who prodded these commissioners to line up and go address a press conference at Cherera and afforded them the luxury of rooms in Cherera and apartments paid for by the state, Honorable Speaker, because somebody believed they were above the Constitution, they were the law unto themselves, Honorable Speaker. The same people today have been prodding these commissioners to stay put. But I want to speak to these commissioners, Honorable Speaker. They know what they did was criminal. They know what they did was against our Constitution and against the will of the people. They intended to overturn the will of the people exercised through the ballot. They know it is criminal, and they know the right thing to do would have been to resign even before getting the country to where we are and getting this house to even consider such a petition. And I want to speak to them, and I know they are listening to me. Commissioner Masit, Commissioner Cherera of the Cherera Matics, Commissioner Angaya, Commissioner Wanderi, it is time to pack and leave. You need not take the country through another painful process. Kenyans want to move forward from the August 9th elections and the consequent actions of your misbehavior at the Bomas of Kenya. The actions of these commissioners, Honorable Speaker, would easily have turned this country, Honorable Speaker, into a banana republic. I must commend the people of Kenya. I must commend the millions of people who voted for the Azimio candidate, Raila Odinga, and the running mate, Martha Karua, that they resisted and desisted from being incited to get into the streets by these commissioners and those who are prodding them. Honorable Speaker, we must thank and commend Kenyans that for the first time in the history of our republic, Honorable Speaker, since the advent of multipartyism, Kenyans have now seen that they can go into elections, vote for the candidate of their choice, commend those who win, and congratulate those who lose, and the country moves on peacefully. We must commend the people of Kenya. But these commissioners must also equally pay. And I want to ask this House to support the recommendations of the Jailer Committee that these commissioners indeed be subjected to a tribunal. But I would advise them to not even allow themselves to get to the tribunal. It will be a painful process for this country to take the country through a tribunal. We do not want to relive. I was at the Bomas of Kenya, and Mr. Speaker, you were also there. You know the tension that gripped this country out of the actions of commissioners who are being irresponsible, who are being insensitive to millions of Kenyans who woke up very early to go and vote for candidates of their choice. And Honorable Speaker, the right thing to do, I want to repeat, would even not to get to the position where the committee is recommending to His Excellency the President to appoint a tribunal to deal with this matter in accordance to Article 251, sub-Article 5 of our Constitution, I would encourage them to give our country peace. They wanted to destroy the peace that Kenyans had elected to live with after peacefully voting, going home, and waiting peacefully for results. For commissioners, Honorable Speaker, who were appointed to office not so long ago, Honorable Speaker, to have had the temerity, Honorable Speaker, to do what they are doing, was a very sad day for our country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, you remember when in the 12th Parliament, the process of appointing commissioners came to this floor. We indicated, those of us who are speaking for who are speaking, that we had not followed due process. Indeed, Commissioner Irene must sit. There is an existing court order that had only allowed her to sit in office until they were able to conduct the elections, because she was rightfully not in office, Honorable Speaker. And there is a court judgment. This is the same commissioner who will not even submit herself to due process. And she knows she ought not even to be in office in the first place. Honorable Speaker, let me not even get into details of the misbehavior of these commissioners, but urge this House to rise to the occasion and approve this report as recommended by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, so that it may be a lesson to whoever else will ever be appointed to a constitutional commission or to serve in any public office, that you exercise public office in trust of the people of Kenya, and never at the behest or the calling of anybody who makes you to imagine that they hold powers that are beyond the Constitution. Like these commissioners were made to believe that there exists a deep state and a system that would fix the election. The people to fix any election in this country are the voters who wake up early to go and vote for the leaders of their choice. And Honorable Speaker, I wish to submit and encourage Kenyans to continue voting, knowing that every vote will count, and never again shall any other person attempt to overturn the sovereign will of the people exercised on the ballot if action is taken against these commissioners. With that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to support and urge members to indeed support the committee's report and ask the President to waste no time in dealing with people who are otherwise criminals, people who wanted to burn our country. Set up the tribunal, but if they are willing, they can also save us from that cost of setting up tribunals. They can save the country from the pain of having to go back to what happened at Bomas of Kenya on that fateful day, Honorable Speaker, by simply resigning. Honorable Speaker, I submit.
The Honorable Deputy Speaker. Yes, what was the point of order? Yes, Honorable Gikaria.
Honorable Speaker, I know this is a very important thing, but Honorable Speaker, I rise on a point of order. I don't know whether the majority leader was seconding, so that I can ask you to limit the others who will be given 5. Honorable Speaker, this is a very critical issue. I remember what happened in 2007, and I live in Nakuru County, and what happened because of a mistake of a few individuals.
What is the point of order?
I'm just asking whether we can, instead of the 10 minutes, we can be given 5 minutes each. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Now, three is too small. We'll have just mentioned the names of the 4, 5 at least.
Order, Honorable members. It is now 6:58. I'll allow you to debate this motion depending on availability of those who want to speak up to 7:58. 1 hour. Whereafter, I'll call the mover to reply and put the question. To that extent, I'll allow debate to take 5 minutes per speaker. Deputy Speaker, 5 minutes each. If you can spend less, the better. and avoid unhelpful repetitions.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to add my voice in support of this report of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. I just would like, as we proceed to debate this particular report, is to make it clear, not only to those in the House, but Kenyans at large, that this Parliament was acting pursuant to Article 251 of the Constitution. That a member of the Commission, and I may quote, a member of a commission or holder of an independent office may be removed from office only for the following reasons, and it sets it out. And you can see that these particular petitions that came before the Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs Committee met that threshold. Honorable Speaker, as I support this particular motion, I think it is important that we know that the job of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee was to establish a prima facie case that warrants interrogation further by a tribunal. So they were not supposed to go into too much detail. The rest of the details shall be interrogated before a tribunal. And we look forward as Kenyans that tribunal does have an opportunity to investigate this matter, because it is important for Kenyans to know exactly what happened on that August the 15th and the days preceding it. We know that these particular commissioners were not only in violation of the Constitution, but they were part of a larger conspiracy, as seen in the report of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. A conspiracy that involved eventually the killing of 2 Indian nationals who are working for the Electoral Commission. They were part of a bigger conspiracy where they organized violence at the Bomas of Kenya Tallying Center. They were also part of a conspiracy to allow the attack on various agents from the Kenya Kwanza side. They were also part of a conspiracy to try and commit something akin to treason by attempting to change the results of the petition. Also, when you look at this particular report, it is clear that for the first time in the history of the electoral management in Kenya, the commissioners themselves became petitioners in favor of one candidate against a commission where they are serving commissioners. If this is not contravention and violation of the Constitution of Kenya, then I do not know what that would be. Honorable Speaker, I therefore support the recommendations made by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee in relation to the 4 named commissioners for gross violation of the Constitution that warrants removal from office through an establishment of a tribunal. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Members should be as disciplined as that. You didn't exhaust your 5 minutes. The honorable member for, yes, Mandera.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I stand to support the report of my former colleagues, Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, on this very critical and important issue to the country or to Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is the same 4 commissioners who have been given the mandate to oversee the elections. They have done the overseeing of the voters registration. They employed election officials, which they were very satisfied with. They followed all the processes. At the end of the processes, the voting, when they realized that things are not going the way they wanted, that the Kenyan citizens have decided whatever they have decided, and that was not in tandem with their ideology, then they started to bring the problems they brought. This is like a hen eating its own eggs. A hen that has laid eggs, that has incubated, when it's about to hatch, when the chicks are about to hatch, the hen goes back and eats its own eggs and eats its chicken. These commissioners, whatever they have done, is burning this country completely. It is only by grace of God that we got help. Otherwise, what happened at Bomas and what happened at Cherera, when they knew the result, they are the ones who tallied. They were responsible. They knew the result. And therefore, because of their selfish wishes and because of even the way they were initially employed, I was a member of the Justice and Legal Affairs who vetted those commissioners. There was, during that time, during the vetting itself, when they were being employed, there was a lot of queries. There was a lot of malpractices even that time. The Committee of Justice and Legal Affairs even put part of its report during that time that some of these commissioners that are being appointed were not up to standard, and they were given the opportunities. It is very, very unfortunate that instead of just honorably resigning and shaming themselves and walking away and hiding.
Honorable.
It is very important for us as the House to send a very clear message to every person who holds an office of high calling. Every person who is a commissioner, who has an office of authority, must be able to discharge his or her duties with integrity, with commitment, and with passion which Kenyans expect him or her to discharge his duties. These four commissioners, Mr. Speaker, they were about to burn this country. This country has taken the efforts of our forefathers to be where it is today. It has taken the energy and the commitment of many Kenyans to have the institutions which we have. And we cannot afford to destroy our democracy because of people who are after subverting the will of the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, it is good for us as members of this House to send a very clear signal and strong one by sending these four commissioners home with immediate effect. Mr. Speaker, I support the recommendation of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Now, who next? I'll give the member for Molo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The report before this House, Mr. Speaker, is purely based on the veracity of the petition presented before the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is only fair to say that the Jailer Committee took an impartial role as it took through a quasi-judicial role, Mr. Speaker. The respondent, Mr. Speaker, waived their fair administrative action rights and therefore would have no pause to seek retrieve in any other avenue, Mr. Speaker. Kenya holds one of the most expensive elections in the world, not just in terms of the cost, but most importantly in terms of the opportunity cost of the foregone business and economic activities during, before, during, and after after elections, Mr. Speaker. We need to put this to an end. When Kenyans go to vote, they need to go back to their businesses. We did not scare away any investors because it is an electoral period. And with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion.
KJ.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. And I rise to support the report that has been presented by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. Mr. Speaker, it is important that it goes on record that the committee was not there to judge the 4 commissioners. In fact, we should be here thanking some patriotic Kenyans who presented petitions to this House. And according to our constitution, Mr. Speaker, we are mandated to look into and resolve any matter of interest in this country, Mr. Speaker. And this is a matter of great interest, Mr. Speaker. Why so? Because what happened in Bomas, Mr. Speaker, can only be defined as sacrilege. These are people who are actually candidates for a charge of treason, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what was intended to happen at Bomas was tallying of votes. However, some 4 individuals took it upon themselves to appropriate to themselves powers that they did not have. They wanted the results unpacked, and they wanted to vote on a vote. After millions of Kenyans had gone to the ballot and voted, 4 Kenyans wanted to vote on the vote that Kenyans had voted on. Mr. Speaker, the report coming from the committee is damning. We wish it would have been the final stage, because what we are about to go into is an expense that a country like ours does not need to go into. These are people who, if they were honorable enough, would have just decided to quit the positions immediately after the announcement of the elections. So, Mr. Speaker, without taking much more time, I want to add my voice to those who are here saying that we should support the report of the committee, and the president should set up a tribunal pronto and this decision made so that we can move on as a country. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Ainapkoi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support. I don't know why.
If you are all like KJ and the Deputy Speaker, many people will speak.
Thank you. Thank you. I will be very brief, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate the Chairman of Justice and Legal Affairs. As you know, I'm the former chair. I'm the Chairman Emeritus. He has done a wonderful job. Yes. He has done a job that is without comparison, and I want to thank and appreciate them. Mr. Speaker, you know, I get very surprised. These commissioners were appointed pursuant to Article 250 of the Constitution. They sit in office pursuant to Article 250 of the Constitution. Article 251 of the Constitution is invoked by Kenyans as required by the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Article 3 of the Constitution, because they said lawyers, we're also going to be lawyers here, Mr. Speaker. Article 3 of the Constitution provides that every Kenyan must defend and uphold this Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I get very surprised when they are invited to come. They are given fair administrative action as required by Article 47 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, in which it says, I'd like to read for them for free. Maybe they have been paying lawyers to come and do some wrong things. The Article 247, it says, every person has the right to a fair administrative action that is expeditious, efficient, lawful, reasonable, and procedurally fair. Mr. Speaker, what the committee did was to complete this thing in a very expeditious manner as provided by the Constitution. I was very surprised when somebody said here, why is the expedition, why is the work being expedited? Why is the work being expedited when the Constitution in Article 47, they should read? They just need to acquaint themselves with the provisions of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, has already been said, Mr. Speaker, this committee did not, it went even to a great length of making an attempt to entertain evidence from those people. In fact, you just needed, as the Deputy Speaker said, to consider those petitions on just a prima facie, on just on the face of it. And I must thank you. You went into the depth. You did the work of the tribunal. I think the tribunal will have very little work to do, Mr. Speaker. They have already been guided, and they will just complete their work in the most expeditious way. And with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Woman member for Kiambu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make my contribution on this matter. What surprises me in this whole issue is the fact that two of these members are women, and women who are supposed to represent mothers, who are supposed to even have an understanding of what the implication they were just about to bring in the country and what it would have done to families and mostly to mothers and children. I would just want to say that these people need to speak to themselves and not even be given an opportunity to say anything, but just the very noble thing to do is just to resign and walk away. The pain that they would have caused this country, the struggle that they would have caused this country would have been enormous, and the loss that we would have gone through. But again, Mr. Speaker, I would also want to say that I am equally disappointed when I see other people from the other party trying to support them, and I'm almost asking that any common sense would ask anybody to explain even how the arrangement was done. These people had sat and had a conspiracy of hurting this country. Because when you look at a hotel where they had gone to do their presentation, that hotel must have been booked. It's a private premises. They must have booked and paid. When you look at the media house that they used to make the announcement, it also must have made an arrangement. And so we can as well say it was a whole combination of people who try to be goons in this country and try to spoil the country. So we are requesting that these people, the noble thing that they would do is not put us or subject this country into more pain and to more discussion. They should not provoke us even to continue talking about them. The noble thing they need to do and command respect for the people of this country is owe us an apology and apologize to the people of this country, apologize to the families they would have hurt, and apologize to everybody that they inconvenienced. And for that, Mr. Speaker, I say they better start packing today. We have no time wasting with them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Makali. Yes, Honorable Gikaria, what is out of order?
You know, Honorable Speaker, when I asked for the 5 minutes, I thought I would be getting contrary views from members like myself. I had a contrary view. But now I can see we are in concurrence and everybody is saying they should go. So I'm standing on standing order number 95 to request you to ask the mover to reply so that we can be able to make a decision. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Is that the mood of the House? Yes. So let me, since I had called Honorable Makali, let him speak, then I put the question.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this particular opportunity to contribute to this motion. First, Honorable Speaker, I must say that we need to allay the impression out there that the respondents, the commissioners, were never given an opportunity to give their evidence. Honorable Speaker, the committee in which I sat in gave the commissioners a chance to be able to come and defend themselves before that committee. But they never appeared. They sent very renowned lawyers to appear before that particular committee. But they never filed responses in respect to the petitions that had been filed by the four parties who had filed those petitions. So technically the petitions they stood unrebutted. Two, when the proceedings were going on, Honorable Speaker, the petitioners clearly demonstrated the respective breaches of the Constitution that had actually been breached by the four commissioners. And all Kenyans will remember the 15th of August, the two screens which we saw. They were almost carrying out a coup on the will of the Kenyan people. We looked up at the petitions as they were. Assaults were made on the committee regarding its jurisdiction. But, yes, Honorable Speaker, we withstood a lot of abuses. The committee was even called a kangaroo court. Honorable Speaker, those petitions that were presented met the threshold to enable this National Assembly to be able to send these petitions to the President for the appointment of a tribunal. We cannot wait until the last minute, Your Honorable Speaker. The mistake we have been making is we reconstitute the Commission too close to the elections. This is the rightful time to be able to fix up the issues of the Iebc so that we can be able to have credible and fair elections in future. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support.
Order, honorable members. Having resolved that we stop the debate here, I now put the question, which is that this House considers and adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs on petitions by the Republican Liberty Party, Reverend Dennis Ndwiga Ndumbi, Mr. Geoffrey Langat, and Mr. Owor Steve Jerry, seeking the removal of 4 specified commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, December 1, 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 251 of the Constitution, finds A, that the petition by the Republican Liberty Party discloses serious violations of the Constitution or other laws as a ground for removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Madenge Wanderi, and Mr. Justus Abonyo Nyang'aya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. B, that the petition by Reverend Dennis Ndwiga Ndumbi discloses serious violations of the Constitution or other laws, gross misconduct and incompetence as grounds for removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Madenge Wanderi, and Mr. Julius Abonyo Nyang'aya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. C, that the petition by Mr. Geoffrey Langat discloses serious violations of the Constitution or other laws, gross misconduct and incompetence as grounds for removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Madenge Wanderi, and Mr. Justus Abonyo Nyang'aya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. D, that the petition by Owor Steve Jerry discloses serious violations of the Constitution or other laws, gross misconduct and incompetence as grounds for removal of Ms. Juliana Wonge Cherera, Ms. Irene Cherop Masit, Mr. Francis Madenge Wanderi, and Mr. Julius Abonyo Nyang'aya as commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. 2, resolves that the petitions herein, together with the materials in support thereof, be sent to His Excellency the President pursuant to Article 251(3) of the Constitution. 2, that His Excellency the President appoints a tribunal to deal with the matter in accordance with Article 251(5) of the Constitution. And 3, that His Excellency the President suspends the commissioners herein pending the determination by the tribunal. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.